Today I'm reading from Ecclesiastes, chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, the King James Version. The words of the preacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity is a vanity, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. The sun also riseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose.
Good morning. Good morning. It occurs to me that in my life and being a minister for a good part of my life and now being retired and so on, as I look back over those years of time, that there's only really one sermon that I've had to preach. You know, a lot of sermons that come out and they've been dressed up in different forms and so on. And there have been a lot of topics, but there's probably only one subject, only one topic that is really what my life has been about and my ministry has been about. And it's the subject that you're going to hear this morning, of course. Last week, we talked about the reality and the meaning, sometimes often the pain of hitting bottom in life. Referred to, we used a fancy Greek word for it. It's a theological term, kenosis. But about the experience of feeling empty, alone, depleted, wasted, done. And we said it's from that point that we really can begin to grow. Think about the springtime and the blossoms, and when Teresa and I were in Ireland last May, we were just past the springtime. We saw all the green. You've never seen green until you've been to Ireland. There's so many shades. How many people here have been to Ireland? There's so many shades, aren't there? So many shades of green. It's unbelievable. So beautiful. But you have to have the winter. You have to have the snow. And you have to have the loss and the death of the year before to be able to have the spring that comes. And we mentioned how this emptying out, or this low point, can sometimes feel like, and I used the term last week, the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul. St. John of the Cross, a medieval cleric, used that term. But the good news is, as the title of Hemingway's book suggests, the sun also what? Rises. And today we focus on that, referring to the principal way that we grow and become nurtured and become fulfilled and happy in life. I will testify and I will witness in my own frame of reference that this is done through, I will use quotation marks here, God's love. But my term and my reference to God's love is nothing supernatural. It's nothing mysterious. Not really even theological. And this is my thought that I'm bringing you today, and it's what I've told you I've given 100 sermons on in my life, including this one that you're going to have to listen to. I believe we find God's love and presence where? In fellowship. And in community with each other. Who here doesn't believe in fellowship and community with each other? Not one. Now God's love through such fellowship is found in our churches. It's found in recovery groups. It's found in all close and loving relationships. Families. And I know now you're going to be so happy and so excited to know that there is another Greek word that refers to this. This empowerment of fellowship. And it's up on the board, I hope. No, we didn't get it in there, but that's all right. It's pronounced koinonia, or koinonida. And it's spelled K-O-I-N-O-N-I-A. Koinonia. One of my mentors in my theological studies, a man named Jim Van Eijkeren, considered the way where this began. And he said the derivation of this word, koinonia, comes from community. Communion. Communicate. He said all comes from the same Greek root word, koinonia, meaning to hold things in common. Our common ground is where God stands. Joint participation. And the most commonly used term is fellowship. I want to go back. I want to go back in time, in my mind. I want to go back in time to my early days as a minister and my studies. After creating man, the book of Genesis tells us in the Bible. You've heard the story 100 times, but I want you to go back to that story yourself. Envision God creating man. God says something after he's created man. Something very powerful and significant. He says, it's good. It's good. It's good. But there was one thing that God said about his creation of man that was not good. Do you remember what that was? It was not good, he said, for the man to be what? Yes. The one thing in creation that was not good was that man was alone. And so he created woman, and he created the human species. For us, I'm convinced that trying to live in, quote, the image of God means being in relationship with each other. The image of God is a relational image. We together, not separated, constitute the image of God. As isolated individuals, we are but a fracture of that image. To be made in the image of God is to be made in relationship. Now, moving on from Genesis and from the creation to the New Testament. Jesus was asked various questions by his disciples and others. But one question that he was asked persistently was when the kingdom of God was coming. People wanted to know when this was all going to be over, they get relief from Roman oppression, when their lives would change and turn around. And when asked when the kingdom of God was coming, or where the kingdom of God was, Jesus answered, what? The kingdom of God is in the midst of you. Here. Now. And when does it ever cease to be now? The now is eternal. For me, and when I say I speak for myself, not necessarily the whole church here, God is in relationship. God is relationship. And this is the reason that Jesus gathered together a group of disciples. He didn't go out to preach by himself. He wanted other people around him. And fellowship was necessary for the Apostle Paul when he went out, whose band of brothers included Urbanus, Timothy, Clement, Phoebe, others. So for me, God is in community. God is in communion. When we have community, when we have communion, God is present. I've read recently a book that made a profound impression on me by Gerald May, a psychiatrist. He wrote a book called Addiction and Grace. And he talks about ways to overcome addiction. He testifies to the value of lasting steadiness of communities of faith. I'd like to read a sentence or two, if you will allow me to. When I cannot pray, he says, the prayer of countless others goes on. When I am complacent, others are struggling. When I'm in conflict, others are at peace. And most important, when I cannot act in loving ways, there are those in my communities who can. We need each other. And that's why God is found there. And words that were visionary for churches, I believe, a man named James Thompson proposed that our pastoral ambition is to build the community in the context of the threats posed by the gods of our age. And going back in history a little, to the 1920s and the 1930s, an Episcopal cleric in New York City, rector of church there at Gramercy Park, named Samuel Shoemaker, said this, and this is something else I'd like to read with you. From the first, he said, Christ drew about him a company. To join him, you had to also join that company. And I like this. The church, he says, has always been a scratch company of sinners. It is not the best people in the community gathered together for self-congratulation. It's the people who know they have a great need gathered to find its answer in worship toward God and fellowship with one another. The church, he said, is not a museum. It is a hospital.
Amen.
From its inception, 12-step groups, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, intuitively grasped the value of fellowship. The preamble of AA, I'll read it. It's very brief. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. And the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, offers this assurance. I'd like to read this little passage. It's the last one I'll read to you. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. After Alcoholics Anonymous was formed, shortly after, in 1940, a New York philanthropist, Albert Scott, observed AA's practice of abstinence and of fasting from alcohol, of daily meetings for prayer, of seeking God's will, of breaking bread together, of mutual encouragement, and of fellowship. And he said flatly, why, this is first century Christianity. Yeah. And so too can we find the fellowship we seek in our families, with our friends, with our loved ones, and within the walls of this church. Glass walls. I like that, don't you?
Yeah.
It is here that we can feel nourished, befriended, upheld. Here we find support and encouragement for living a life that sometimes demands more strength than we seem to have. Perhaps one of the best contemporary illustrations of the importance of human community as a touchstone of the divine is found in the contemporary writer, theologian, Henry Nouwen. Nouwen turned his back on a world of fame where he was teaching in Notre Dame, Yale, Harvard. In a remarkable act of humility, resigned all those posts and became a simple chaplain at a center for mentally handicapped adults in Toronto, near Toronto, called L'Arche Community. Why did he do that? What was he looking for?
Fulfillment.
Peace, contact, human contact, fellowship. community. Reality, not up here and here. A sensitive man who was gay, now had been deeply wounded by life and hurt over and over, and became a Jesuit priest. He had personally experienced alienation, separation, and loneliness. It was now a central premise, nevertheless, that out of such wounds and scars, a loving and healing person can emerge, who maybe can better identify with and help others who are hurt. Such a person becomes what now referred to in the title of his book, one of his books, can become a wounded healer. Perhaps all of us can become wounded healers. One could do worse. As now it says, the emptiness of the past and of the future can never be filled by words, but only by the presence of another human being. Then and only then can one who suffers feel that maybe, after all, someone is waiting for me. Everyone now who returns from a long and difficult trip is looking for someone waiting for him or her. Thousands of people commit suicide because there is nobody waiting for them tomorrow. We can save lives of others by becoming their tomorrow. Let us commit ourselves to becoming the tomorrow for those who are about us. As we said last week, we confront who we are and what life is through adversity and the dark night of the soul. But that, my friends, is not the end of the story. If we are blessed, we move on and find purpose and joy in the company of others, in fellowship with one another, and it is there ultimately that we find God. Ecclesiastes, as Teresa read this morning, it says, one generation passeth away, another generation cometh, but the earth abides forever. The sun also